if you're coming in to advise a 50 or $100 million brand? Like, how should they be looking at their marketing?
Any organization that I'm joining, not like, hey, day one, you're doing this wrong, then I'm gonna, tell you exactly what to do. Like I want to be a
You're thinking
student.
it, but you're not telling
Yeah.
anybody.
Yeah. Like the movie White Chicks, like you thought it, you said it. No, like not like that.
Hi, everybody. I'm Aaron Schwartz, one of the founders of Orita. We do AI customer segmentation for a bunch of Klaviyo brands, not
Mhm.
Bark. Maybe one day we'll earn that, but we are not here to talk about Orita, which is why Ivory's here, because she is, first of all, a wonderful human. This is like, I don't know, we've talked maybe half a dozen times and I'm
We
so
have.
happy and I'm going to sucker you into more. You know retention marketing so well. You've been on so many of the like advisory committees for all these
Yeah.
amazing platforms. You've
Yeah.
seen so many different industries. Ivory, I'd love for you to give a proper introduction to yourself, your background, kind of how you got where you are. Don't be short with it. I'll have some follow-ups. Don't worry.
I love to talk about myself. So let's jump into it. Aaron, thank you so much for having me. I love our relationship and our banter. So way back when, so I've always had like a really strong passion, so cliche, passion for fashion. So when I was deciding where I wanted to go to school, I'll go all the way back to the beginning. When I decided where I wanted to go to school, where I wanted to major in, it was always fashion, but I wanted to be in the business side of that. I didn't want to design, I didn't want to have sketches and things like that. But I was always curious and fascinated about how brands got people to buy different things and really kind of lean into that. So my first semester of college, I'm sitting there, I had an 8:30 a.m. business admin class. And as I'm sitting there, I'm saying to myself, if I have to do this for 4 years, I'm not going to make it. And my parents will not be happy about that. So I need to figure it out. I need to figure out the balance for what works for me. So started in business admin, shifted over to fashion marketing and management. And I think it was just a match made in heaven. So after, school and various internships, started at PVH at Calvin Klein Underwear in their marketing department, marketing coordinator, right? Like low on the totem pole. And this was when brands were just using Facebook, Instagram, maybe, for not just personal, but from a business standpoint. I think Vine was a thing for my elder millennials out there. So, Vine was a thing and how to really crack into that. And that was like my first foray. Moved into email marketing. So, email marketing is not something that you ask a kindergartner, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they say, I want to send emails and SMS. That wasn't a thing, but it kind of found me. And again, I was very fascinated by that vertical. So started at Ascena Retail, namely Dress Barn, which I think was a brand that had been around. It was tried and true for many, many years. And Dress Barn was looking to move into e-com. They had users, of course, that were going to the store, but they wanted to bridge the gap. And so they kind of built out this small e-com team of, hey, we need to start sending emails and SMS. And how do we bridge when someone goes into the store? It's things that we send them online and loyalty and all these different things. So I was there, really cut my teeth on bridging that gap between brick and mortar and online. And then I would say I'm really proud of my career about curiosity and getting curious about how do you use a CRM playbook for different areas and different verticals. So at that time, I want to say 2015, 2016, subscription became like the hot new entity, right? You want to rent, you can Netflix was a thing, you can, rent clothes. So Rent the Runway was, big company at the time. And someone had reached out to me from Gwynnie B. And Gwynnie B was a subscription company for plus size women. And again, I was super fascinated with that. So, make the transition to Gwynnie B. And I would say that's where I started to kind of pair not just the CRM, hey, we're going to send emails, we're going to send SMS, we're going to send direct mail, but also pairing the data side of that, right? So becoming my own data analyst of sorts and understanding Tableau and getting into Looker and things of the like. And then after some time at Gwynnie B, said, okay, you know what? I haven't been in the ed tech space. And I was very curious about what this company Little Bits was doing. Little Bits had a pretty vast audience base. It had, users that like to tinker and inventors and things like that. It also had educators that was bringing in STEM into classrooms and things of the like, and being over their entire CRM department there from soups to nuts is really what I was able to hone while I was there. After Little Bits became unfortunately defunct, Scentbird came along. And again, going back to that subscription space. But at that point in my career, I'd never done beauty and fragrance, which again, something from if I take off my marketer hat and just put on, my, hey, this is what I'm into, that was something that I was, fascinated by and telling the story, understanding how you move users from, hey, they come in on this entry level of a subscription how do you increase that LTV? How do you increase that AOV? Like, what does that look like? And Scentbird really allowed me to do that. I would say really things kind of shifted for me when I joined Resident Home. So those that aren't familiar, Resident Home is a brand that namely focuses on mattresses. So Nectar, Dream Cloud, Awara, Silver Lane, things like home decor, bedding, and things like that. And Resident, I would say, unlike any other company that I was at prior, was a machine. It was a marketing machine. And it was a very special sauce of how the marketing team went after users, just to kind of hit on it super quickly. So I remember during the pandemic, no one knows what's happening. It's all over the place. We're all trying to scramble and figure things out. And the marketing team there, we came up with what we call the most stimulating sale. And that was essentially, hey, how are we capitalizing on people are home? Maybe they've had this mattress. You're not going to buy a mattress every 5 years, 10 years. My grandmother may have had her mattress for 30 years, essentially my entire life. I don't know. But you don't buy the mattress all the time. So you're home, you want to be comfortable. And our thought was, how do we capitalize on that, right? People have this extra $1,200 or whatever it was at the time. We need them to spend their dollars with us. So we came up with the most stimulating sale. And that was just an example, one fraction of how we thought about marketing, how we thought about the user, and how we were very timely. And I think, for any marketer listening to this or just in thought, like that hitting on certain, moments in time, you can really capitalize on that. And that was something that we did at Resident, in addition to many other ways that we looked at marketing, that we looked at competitors, and that we use that to our advantage. From a career standpoint, I would say one of the highlights of my career was joining Angie, formerly Angie's List. Again, looking at my career, I was in D2C, I was in subscription, e-commerce, but I had never really kind of scratched the surface on marketplace. And when we think about it now, particularly in 2026, we live in the era of marketplace. You think about that, you think about Amazon, you think about Uber, you think about DoorDash, you think about all these different companies where it's a two-sided marketplace. And I wanted to think about, how do I pair my experience with CRM, looking at email, looking at SMS, direct mail, looking at data. How do you pair that when there's two particular audiences that you have to pair together? And Angie definitely allowed for that. Angie also really honed in on, not just say you're a little bit of a data analyst where you can kind of look at some data and kind of slice and dice it. Maybe you can do some magic with the CSV, but there you really are building your own looker dashboards, and not just a dashboard for dashboard's sake, but looking at the full funnel, what's coming in, does actual meet expected? That's, kind of like a level one. If it does, what is the story that this data is telling you that now you can build a strategy on? And then for all my MBAs out there, or people like myself that you didn't want to pay for the MBA, but you work with people that are super smart and geniuses, and you kind of get a little bit of that MBA dust kind of sprinkles on you. That's what Angie's List was, where you start to understand how to build a framework. And when you look at strategy, if something is working great, how do you get more out of that, right? That's how do you squeeze more out of that? If something is broken, what do you look at and what do you hit on, and what does the data tell you? And that's what I was able to glean from Angie. So always immensely grateful for that experience. And then that brought me to my current role at Bart, right? So I love dogs. Anyone that, if you're the type of person that, you see a dog, you'll smile at the dog before you smile at the owner. That's me. And Bark, was such a special place because again, it kind of brings in like the joy that dogs and pets bring to someone's life. They're part of your family of sorts. Bark is also such a fun place. If you're intimately acquainted with the brand, the different toys and things like that. We can touch on that a little bit, that we have, and really the cult of sort following that people have of like the different toys and collections that Bark has. So bringing all my expertise of subscription and past companies, also e-commerce, and Bark for where the CRM team lives is across the gambit. So acquisition, how do we get people in the door? How do we get subscribers in the door? We have a space called our add to box, which is really like active subscribers and engagement. How do we, get them to again increase their AOV and LTV? Yes, they're going to get, the two toys and two treats that's in their box, but there's a vast, collections of things like that, and we have different collections every month that they might want to look into, and also the retention. How do we keep people, right? How do we keep you with your dog, whether you sign up with us and you have a puppy, your dog is an adult, or if they're a senior, right? How do we kind of touch on all those things and make it special for you? So that's my spiel. story of Ivory Razor.
That was great. I love your background. I mean, I don't know. I appreciate how many different problems you've been able to solve, right, at different
Yeah.
points in your career. I'm trying to figure out where I want to start, and I have too many. Why don't we actually start with something you said around Bark, which was
Yeah.
like, look, there's the performance side and the retention side, and you don't only have to talk about Bark. I'm curious, where does that go really well? Where it's like, hey, look, we are building that machine and we are aligned. Where it's like, okay, cool. It's not just like retention or performance has started performing worse. So retention, you guys just need to figure it out. But like, it's actually shared goals, shared KPIs.
Mhm.
What is the structure that you think is quote unquote right if you're coming in to advise a 50 or $100 million brand? Like, how should they be looking at their marketing mix, their customer journey, their life cycle?
Absolutely. So I would say when I first joined Barker, any organization that I'm joining, not like, hey, day one, you're doing this wrong, then I'm gonna, tell you exactly what to do. Like I want to be a
You're thinking
student.
it, but you're not telling
Yeah.
anybody.
Yeah. Like the movie White Chicks, like you thought it, you said it. No, like not like that. When I'm thinking about it and I'm so I'm looking at it and I'm, again, like you're doing, I'm jotting down notes and I'm understanding and I'm, I have these questions and I, kind of saying, okay, well, I see that you guys are doing this right. I think there's opportunity here. And that's exactly what we were able to do at Bark. So coming in, I wanted to understand what are we doing right on the acquisition side that carries throughout the life cycle? Is it a particular product? Is it a particular offer? Or are we doing things where it makes everyone that works on acquisition, it makes their life easier because they're just bringing people in. And then the people that are thinking about engagement and retention, they have to work 2 and 3 times harder because we brought in maybe a user that only wanted a particular offer. And now when we need to retain them, they're like, no, I'm not going to spend any additional money. Or usually that came in on a particular theme or box, and that's the only thing they wanted. And now when we're trying to upsell them or cross sell them, they're like, thank you. And that's exactly what I was able to kind of hone in on and find that there were particular audiences from a Bark standpoint, broke that down into there are audiences that are completely net new, never subscribed to Bark. They're curious about Bark. We need to give them that education and massage them into, becoming a subscriber. There's also users that have been subscribers in the past, and for whatever reason, maybe their term has ended, maybe they canceled their subscription and they're coming back, right? So, one, how do we segregate that and understand from a segmentation standpoint who we're talking to? And then from my team in particular, very, very structured into looking at the why. Why is someone coming? What are they looking to do? Right? Let's understand that part. And then also, let's not just build a strategy again just for acquisition, which we're kind of high fiving each other. Hey, we hit that number, we hit that sub goal, we hit that revenue goal for this particular month. And then 5 months, 6 months, 12 months down the road, when my retention partners need to prove out a certain number, that it becomes like, almost an impossible feat. So my team, again, like any uh strategy that we're looking at all the permutations and all the different
Mm.
things of like when they come in here, what happens here, 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 here. And that's how, I've always structured anything, particularly at
I
Bark.
appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, it feels like, look, we should not have a leaky bucket, and if we do,
That's
let's actually go figure out at the top. I mean,
yeah.
it's the same thing for, like a B2B company, and I talk about
Okay.
this with our team a lot. Like, if we're gonna close a deal and they're gonna churn in 6 months, don't close the deal. Like, we either are
Mhm.
gonna create enough value, we have, like, such high conviction, and
Exactly.
obviously,
Exactly.
sometimes you're wrong, but yeah, you gotta fix that.
Exactly.
Something you mentioned was the why. I'm curious, like, what
Mhm.
tools you use to understand why people are here. Is it like on-site quizzes? Is it just customer discovery? Do you have like teams around you? Like, how do you go figure out why somebody is engaging with you?
That's an excellent question. So I would say you thinking about this at Resident. So at Resident, we had our kind of tried and true Nectar Classic, right? Someone comes in, I think at the time that mattress was priced at maybe like 6.99, and they got like a bundle with it. So it was very much like kind of slam dunk. Someone has high intention, they're coming to a mattress site. I'm not just kind of like sitting by the pool browsing mattresses site. That's nice. Okay, they have that. Okay, great. Thank you. And then go about my day. We were expanding our collection to like a Premier, I think like a Premier Classic and things of the like. And we were trying to figure out how do we get people to not just buy the classic, just the one thing, but to your point, utilizing a quiz and understanding the why. We set up a lead capture test to say, okay, great, they landed on the site. Are you shopping for yourself? Is it for you and a partner? Is it for your child? Is it you and a dog? Like, like who's in your bed? Because that would lean to what type of mattress makes sense for you, right? Let us steer you, let us guide you. And, we ran that test, ran it for, say, about 60 days. And we definitely saw an increase in not just the AOV, but also the add on products. So people, it's like, oh, yeah, great. I'll just get one classic. We steered them to like, no, you need this. And also, in addition to that mattress, hey, here's a bundle. Also, in addition to that bundle, mattress insurance is something that you need, right? If you spill wine on it, if you have kids and things like that. So it was that type of test that led us to this is exactly what you should be focused on. I think again, bringing that back to Bark, that's definitely a strategy that we would look to do. I think later this year, right? Like, hey, you're coming in, you're subscribing. Do you have a puppy? Do you have an adult dog? Do you have a senior dog? Right? These are the types of products that you would like. These are the types of boxes that you would like. Is your dog a dog that likes to kind of kick around their toy? Or they're a dog that, that you're probably on your third couch because they're scratching your couch and carrying on. Maybe they're super chewers. So I think there's definitely room for that in a few different areas.
It makes a ton of sense. It's like a quiz is so powerful. I
Mhm.
think a lot of companies think about it like it creates friction in the process, but it's the type of thing kind of analogous to what you were talking about before with like the name of the game is to convert somebody and then have them love the product. And so if you
Mhm.
have like some people follow the funnel, but you ultimately have like a higher quality base and they convert higher, awesome, right? And they like you more, that
Exactly.
is like the long-term optimal strategy.
I think so. I think so. If you think about it, right? Because I think you have that like zero party data, and then you have that first party data, right? You have like people are literally saying this, like, actually, I'm here because of this reason. So
Yeah.
opposed to you trying to me, maybe that you'll get there eventually with that zero party data, but it may take longer than that first party. Someone is telling you, like, give me this. I want this exactly. And then you can, provide that experience for them.
I like it. I want to ask a little bit. You kind of mentioned your curiosity earlier, and you mentioned Resident as a marketing
Mhm.
machine. The thing that
Yeah.
I find overwhelming in a position like yours, and you can talk again about
Mhm.
anywhere from your, is there
Sure.
are so many things you could spend your time on, and so there are two
Mhm.
threads I kind of want to pull on that. The one thread is like, what are the resources you want around you, or how do you build yourself as like a CRM leader who is
Mhm.
self-serving, right? Like you mentioned Tableau and Looker, is it like, hey, every CRM leader who wants to be great, you need to develop these skills or go to a place that actually has like this around you? Like, I'm curious about like the necessary conditions to be successful. And then I have a separate follow up, but let's stay on that to start.
No, I love that. So maybe a year or two ago, I was speaking at an Iterable conference. Shout out Iterable and Clavio and all the other wonderful ESPs. I don't want to be, agnostic to them. And one of the topics that I that I hit on was what are all the tools, right? So I kind of framed this in the space of infinity stones, right? As a CRM leader, what are the infinity stones that
Oh, I
you
like
need
it.
to collect? I should like TM that, right? What are those
Mhm.
infinity stones? So to me, one is you are a project manager of sorts, right? You are managing different timelines, you're managing different people and different personalities. That's definitely one infinity stone. Another infinity stone is you are a creative of sorts, right? I haven't met anyone in the CRM space that isn't, on top of the copy, that can't do the creative, that they can't do a creative brief themselves, right? If usually they're in Figma moving things around. My creative team probably dislikes that I do that, but that's another infinity stone. Another one is being a data analyst of sorts. And I think to me, that is probably the top infinity stone that, yes, whether you're at a company where you have vast resources or you're a company where, it's a startup, you need to be able to go into the data on your own. And I think that that's not something that someone teaches you. I think that's something that you have to develop and learn over time. And that's been something for me, like not to shy away from, I don't, I have a data analyst or I have an analytics team that can dive into that for me. But I think, sometimes from a gut standpoint, and also like, hey, if something is broken or you're trying to build out a strategy, to be able to go and be hands on keyboard, it's a phrase that I use with my team a lot, to be very hands on keyboard and
Yep.
be able to build your own Looker dashboard for exactly what you need. Again, some things are table stakes where you're like, hey, on a daily basis, you want to make sure that the email that I sent was delivered, was open, was clicked. This was the revenue, XYZ. Like you can be able to build that. But I think that it produces another, it gives you in a different stratosphere as not just a CRM person that can think through like email and SMS and direct mail and things like that, but that can speak from an analytics standpoint. That means that you can speak to the marketing team and say, hey, your this particular paid ad, right, at the very top of the funnel, landed here and this is what's working versus not. You also have the ability to speak to uh your CFO and your finance team of like, hey, this is how efficient
Mhm.
these channels are. So I think that that's definitely part of the opinion stones as well as well the people some other things. But
That's great. I love the
um,
framing. Yeah, this is wonderful. Uh,
yeah.
okay, so you're good at data, right? I'm like, you're the project manager, you've got the creative, you've got the trust of the
Mhm,
organization. One of the problems with great power comes great responsibility
mhm,
is there are a ton
yeah,
of fires and there are a ton of things that are like problems, but then there are also a ton of
yeah,
things that are pretty good, but actually maybe it's worth making it great or making it exceptional. How
mhm.
do you, this is more like advice for other CRM managers. When you've got all the stuff, how do you decide what fires to fight or where to put on leverage?
Yeah. I love that. So one of the things that I've used, and I started to use this framework at Angie, is more of kind of like an ICE model. So like from an impact, a confidence level, and efficiency, right? So it's looking at okay, and again, taking out the subjectiveness, right? So me as a
Mm.
CRM leader, I can say, oh, I know that if we do this strategy, if we launch this particular flow, or things that are like it's going to do this. Someone else on the marketing side can say, yeah, but we have more dollars to do this. Again, someone else on the data analytics side.
Mm.
So anyway, I think from a not just from a CRM perspective, but it's just working with different personalities, it allows us to be very clear. And
Mm.
again, there's no feelings involved to say, hey, here are all the initiatives, right? Let's list them all out, right? Like A
Mm.
to Z, soup to nuts. Here's the impact that we think this is going to have, right? We may see that, we may not through testing. Here's the confidence that we have with that. And that's where that framing comes in at. And that's where it's like, what's the background that you have? Here's the efficiency, right? And the effectiveness of this thing. If we think about from a organization standpoint, what are the things that the organization wants to hit on, right? What are the goals of an organization? Whether you look at that from a yearly basis, from a
Mm.
quarterly basis, if you're looking at it
Mhm.
in sprints, whatever that looks like, and then let's anchor towards that. Because I think you'll always have different cross-functional areas and partners that want to get their thing done. But
Mm.
that's been a model that allowed me to concisely say, if I had to speak to this in front of our entire company, someone's not going to kind of sit there with their arms folded and saying, that doesn't make sense because it's laid out very clearly.
Like that framework. That was really helpful, like from a framing of like where to apply pressure, right? And where to fight fires.
Yeah.
The other piece I wanted
Yep.
to ask you that you already kind of dovetailed in is like you are in a role, but you're in a
Sure.
role at a company with a lot of other stakeholders. And one of the
Yeah.
things that we see a lot is we'll have a retention manager early in their career, late, it doesn't matter. And they're like, yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I know the data says we can make more money if we send fewer emails, we send them to the right people, but my boss
Mhm.
wants us to set more. Do you have any advice on the maybe it's like actually just digging down the data and everything you said, but is there anything else where like somebody in the retention world where they're kind of getting like thrown around based on like the whims of a CFO or a marketer or the acquisition team
Yeah.
changed something and didn't communicate? How does like somebody in a retention side advocate for retention in a way that like I don't know if you have any tips as like a mentor to somebody who's in
No, I
that.
do. Yeah, I do. The number one thought that I have there is data doesn't lie, right?
Mhm.
Shakira, hips don't lie. You ask me, data doesn't lie. When when I say shake your head, uh, I say that in from a BART standpoint. So when I started at BART, I had
Mhm.
a partner that was like, "Hey, we need to send MMS, MMS, MMS. Let's that's what we need. We see X amount of subscriptions when we send that." And I said, "Okay, well, a few things. MMS is more expensive. So how are you proving out the ROI on that? Or is it being very short-sighted?" And I think from that standpoint, if they're kind of being tossed around XYZ, almost all the time, it is a very short-sighted goal that someone wants them to attain, and not thinking about the long tail of that. So I always say, from a retention standpoint, from a CRM standpoint, like you own it. You own the wins. You also own the losses. And more times, the losses are weighted more heavily than the wins are. So if someone is saying, well, just send it or just do this, right? They kind of use emails like a drug, like, just send an email, send an email or an SMS. It's really your responsibility to kind of prove out all the different things that they don't know. They're not a CRM with, right? They're not in that space, but you know that maybe it hurts your deliverability. Maybe it's hurting your unsubscribe rate. Maybe it's hurting your bounce rate. Maybe all the different, again, permutations that someone just sees the one primary goal. I always advocate for the CRM and retention person to think about the broad realm, right? And prove out, hey, we can do this one. Let's do the test. Don't just
Mhm.
send to send, right? Because anyone can do that, especially in the age of AI. They can say, okay, well, why do we need a CRM person if we just need someone to send messages, right? You can just have an AI agent do that for you. Where you come in at, and what really kind of like proves out why your salary is the things that the AI agent may not do or may not think of or may not surface to the organization, where you can say like, hey, I'm the owner of this and I understand it. I understand if we send more, maybe we made more in that time frame, but we used more SMS credits, right? That we didn't need to, and things like that. So that would be my advice for that person.
The way I interpret what you're saying for what it's worth is like the best CRM managers or the best retention heads, whatever, are like really thinking about the whole system.
Yeah,
And if you think about an agent is optimizing for the individual or the person. It is not optimizing for a system. And so if
exactly
you
that.
tell the agent like, "Hey, go convert this person," there's amazing tooling out
They'll
there
do
that
it.
will convert. The question is,
Absolutely,
should you actually try to convert that person today, or do you wanna save them, right? Or who we
exactly
met.
that.
Oh, I really like that. That's fascinating. All right, thank you. Man, there's so many different threads I wanna pull on here. We can talk about
All of
movies,
them, all
we can
of
talk
them,
about
anything,
vacations, we can go everywhere.
whatever.
The one that is fascinating to me is you mentioned ed tech. Little Bits was cool, by the way.
Yeah.
You mentioned subscription businesses. You're obviously at bigger companies, smaller companies, marketing machine co like, you've kind of been
Mhm.
all over the place. Are there certain principles besides, like, kind of that being close to data, right? Are there other things that you kinda taken away where you're like, "Oh, no matter where I go next, this is what a great retention org looks like"? Is it like customer centricity plus being close to data? Are there any other pieces? And then I'm gonna ask the flip side, which is like, what are the mistakes people make when they're kinda stepping into the retention world?
Absolutely, yeah. So again, I think the data is always the number one. I think the second, kind of frame that I'll always look at is understanding the technical parts of that,
Mm,
understanding what's going into your ESP, what's
mm,
flowing out, right? So understanding how things work, whether it's the profile properties, is it clean? Looking at the different events that you're triggering. What are you
mm,
triggering? When are you triggering? What's in that data payload, right? To understand, to make sure that you can use that. And that it's not just a whole bunch of fluff just to have it in there, but it's something. And my thought, anytime I'm looking at any program and stepping into an ESP or stepping into any org, like going through each event to understand exactly what it does and why I need it. Because to me, sometimes it's very cloudy, right? You can have all these different events and all these different data points, and it's so overwhelming. You don't know what to do with that. But if
huh.
you can scale that down and call it down, to make sure that every single piece is something that can be efficient, that's where I find success.
What are the mistakes you like again, it's $50 million
Mhm.
company. What are the mistakes they're
Yep.
probably making now? It's like a good brand, it's a good smart retention marketer, but what's the, like,
Mhm.
tried and true things that people should not be thinking about?
Well, I'll just, say from my standpoint, I think mistakes that I've made is sometimes over segmenting
Mm,
way too much, right? Going
mhm,
into it like, okay, they're this person that's, has salt and pepper hair, likes the color yellow, doesn't have a beard, maybe likes to go to Miami. Like it's over segmented in it, and then missing dollars there because they could have probably been into different area. I could have sent them a
mm,
different message, things like that, that
mm,
I didn't because they didn't qualify for that segment. And then again, on the other side of that is just being more of a slab. So I think the words that I use to any of my mentees are there's people that are kind of just works in slabs of like, we're going to send everything to everybody. Obviously, we know that doesn't work, but people still do it, surprisingly. And then there's the other side of that spectrum where they're so surgical with a
mm,
scalpel that,
yep.
they can kind of peel the skin off a grape. And you're like, but you're missing dollars there. So I would say that to me, that's a mistake. There's always a middle ground. There's a fine line.
I look at audits all day, every day, and the
I
like
know.
variability, no matter what industry, of like some will send 15 a week, some will send one a
Yep.
week. The
Yep.
framing that I have kind of taken to using is like, because we partner with agencies and we partner with Klaviyo, and like we're like,
Hmm.
cool. For me to come in and tell you, Ivory, you should send 10 emails a week or three is crazy. I don't know your demand planning. I don't know your capabilities on creative. I don't know what
Exactly.
stories you want to tell. But what I can do for you on the data side is like remove those like all or nothing segments that you have to use and be like,
Yeah.
Aaron can get 10 emails a week. He's voting. He wants to get 10. He'll take, if you could do
Exactly.
11, do 11. Ivory needs two. Johnny needs zero. Like today is
Right.
not the day. And it's like, it is really fascinating watching because we get to learn from amazing marketers all the time.
Hmm.
And, like I ran a brand for a decade and I sent every email to everybody. I was like, this is good shit. You should see it. I'm so proud of it. Enjoy it. And like that was wrong.
Yeah.
I know that now. Turns out different people have different preferences, but
You're right.
Okay,
Okay.
I like that middle zone. I'm very much with you. Um,
Yeah.
all
You
right, I
know,
want
add to that, as you're thinking about your, and just sorry to also like analysis paralysis. I think it
mm,
kind of leans on, I think it leans on that, right? Of like, you
mm,
can't do this. It needs to be this X, Y, Z. Again, I think there's always a middle ground there. Like when you're looking at what stats say, don't, get so deep into the testing that you can't move the needle forward, that you can't, move a certain kind of way and don't not test at all. It's like, oh, this has been working. So again, it's looking at that full system. I think we kind of keep coming back to that as a theme of like, how do you look at the full systems?
well, one thing I'm actually curious for your advice on this. We've started talking about like a lot of our brands just don't have capacity, or they have an agency and the agency does 20 campaigns a month, and the agency is
Yeah.
amazing. The brand's like, look, sorry, it's locked in. We can't do the 21st. And so
Mhm,
we've seen the data that look, sending one incremental email is really, really worth it. But
mhm.
if they don't have the creative, our advice is go find an email from 3 months ago that's not seasonal and that's not a discount, and like literally repurpose
Yeah.
it. The internet
Yep.
is ephemeral and nobody remembers. Those to me are the opportunities to experiment and figure out, hey,
Mhm.
did it work? And if it works, then maybe you go unlock budget to go do it. Does that track with you? Or like, I don't know what other experiments and like how else
I love
to
that.
do things on the cheap.
No, I love that. So I would say from the cheap, exactly that, 100%. Like what has worked, not something that says happy holidays in March, right? Or happy new year, but like what is something that has worked? How do you kind of like repurpose that,
Mm,
right?
mm,
That's a money maker. I'll give an example on the bark side. So
mm,
I want to say maybe in October, we did
mm,
we call it like a memo style. I know a lot of brands are kind of doing this now. They're doing like the fake apologies and things like that. Guys, don't do that. People hate them actually. They're good. Yeah, you're like, oh, making a face like they're getting a little tired of that. But we didn't do that. We did that, but we kind of honed that more into what I like to call the bark office dogs. And this is when I say one, the fastest way that we are making money. It's a memo style email, so it's plain text. Didn't invent plain text, right? Plain text works across the board. One, I think it works because what I've seen is it's a higher chance of deliverability, right? You're
mm,
getting in more as Gmail and Yahoo are, crawling and their sender requirements are getting pretty strict as they have been for the last 2 years. The plain text lands more in the primary inbox. Also, from a Bark standpoint, our users are obsessed with these messages. Like it's almost like printing money of sorts, where it's something that we kind of did one off and was like, hey, that works. Let's try that again. Didn't require
mm,
design. It didn't require HTML, right? It's just me going in
mm,
there, thinking about the copy, kind of jamming that out, sending it out. So exactly to what you're saying is think about if there's a time constraint, there's a resource constraint,
mm,
think about what has worked and how do you just templatize that over and over and over again, right? And iterate on it so that if you needed to send out an email within the next hour, you're not handcuffed and you're like, oh my God, we can only get it out in 2 days from now. But how do you move fast? And I think from a CRM professional, you should always have something or some tricks in the holster that we needed to get out something again, kind of hitting on um, timeliness. Again, going back to that more stimulating sale or uh, I think when Taylor Swift got engaged, we were like, she got engaged, and 30 minutes later, we had an SMS going out the door. Right? That's really to me what makes it.
I love it. I like the framing of, it's like, don't scramble last minute, already have the tricks lined up and know what you're going to do. It's like
Exactly.
the break in case of emergency, have that ready to rock.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
All right. Maybe for the last 5 or 10 minutes, I'd love to talk about like AI tooling and a little bit about platforms. And the kind of two
Yeah.
threads I want to pull on is number
Mhm.
one is like you've been on the advisory board or like different names for like every platform. I think Attentive, Iterable, Klaviyo.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
curious how you think about that and how you think about what platform is right or, no platform is best for everybody, but
Right.
curious about that experience, and then I'm also curious, like, what are the AI tools that you're playing around with that you're excited by? Or if there aren't any, what are you hopeful gets better because
Mhm.
that'll be the big unlock for you? Ivory, discuss.
And go in action. I'll choose my words very carefully because I have a lot of friends and a lot of different ESPs, and I don't want anyone else to be like, you mentioned them, not me.
You don't need to stack rank, but I'm curious, like, the experience of having been across all
Yeah,
like, so
sure,
many.
for sure. I think that I'll start with Iterable. From an Iterable standpoint, to me, Iterable is definitely the platform for a technical marketer. If you like to be able to, build events again and know exactly what's in those events and those metrics and build things out for yourself, or you have a team, a small team that can do that for you. You get to be very flexible with Iterable and really hone and build it to what your org needs, what your company needs, and that's when I was at Angie. we use iterable, and we had so many different tests. We had something called a post SR, service request test, and it required a lot of different areas and different flows and how someone would kind of land in a particular flow, that it just wasn't something that we could build out of the gate. And it allowed us to be very nimble, and again, curate to what we needed. And I think about Klaviyo. To me, Klaviyo is if you are probably like a team of one, or, maybe a team of almost none, and you need something that's, built for you. Here's the playbook. Here's exactly what to do. I think that Klaviyo does that very, very well. I also think the CSMs at Klaviyo, they, to me, have always been an extension of my team, right? They jump in, they think about what they don't just kind of wait for you to tell them. Like, they're asking those questions of what's important to you. The number one question that I think I've experienced from the Klaviyo CSM, which I appreciate, is how do we get you promoted? What can we do, right, to get you promoted? Which of course I appreciate, and I think any CRM professional would appreciate. So it may not be things that you can build out of the box. Again, it may not be things that is as dynamic to you, but they're able to find ways and kind of pivot and flow. I would say like water of sorts of like, okay, this is something that we don't have right now in our tech stack, but we can figure out a workaround. And I think that's been great. I think when I think about Attentive as well as Postscript, shout out to Postscript as well. I think about innovation. And what I've seen is anytime I'm speaking numbers and I'm speaking about how efficient my channels are, I speak about that in percentage contribution, right? Like, is if CRM is at 12%, I want to get it to 15%, and then 18% is that reach. How do we get there? And more times than not, it's always been, hey, email is doing things. And again, we can ring out that towel, and it's like, okay, we've got an email maybe to 8% or 10%. Really, the magic happens with SMS. And I think Attentive and Postscript, uh, they have that power,
Mm.
right? How do you get more people to sign up? How do you use SMS in a way? Because to me, the channel acts very differently than email. And what does that look like? I'll touch on RCS in a little bit. I mean, it's also kind of unlocking RCS, right? Which is, to me, new channel, so many things that you can do there. So I think those platforms in particular, they're at the forefront of using RCS, and instructing and kind of sorting their clients on what to do there. AI. Let's talk about AI. I have a love-hate relationship with AI because, again, like I said, I'll go back to like, 10 years from now, I'm planning my retirement of, is it just AI agents just sending email, or is it how do you utilize AI? So I have a professional colleague that was thinking about, we're building out an AI agent, a life where it plugs directly into the ESP that you're using, whether it's Klaviyo, Iterable, et cetera, and then looking at the different metrics, right? So again, kind of honing in on templates and things like that that you can repurpose. Here are
Mm.
all of the, let's take February, for example. Here are all the emails that you sent in February. Here was the top open rate, less Apple mailbox privacy, right? Because that can inflate your open rates. It was the revenue for that. Here is what you can use in March, right? That kind of hones in on that and like refreshes that. So I think when I think about AI, I think about that, like not making it net new where you're just like, hey, ChatGPT or Claude, give me a subject line, right? But it's like, here's what makes sense for my
Right.
segment. Take this, again, plugging into that platform. Here's this particular segment.
Mm.
Again, am I over suppressing? Is this too broad? Am I missing a segment? And then looking at on a personal level, here's
Mm.
the profile properties connected what works. So okay, I think some of that, I'm starting to kind of to utilize. I think if we have this conversation a year from now, there'll be more there. I could say, hey, Aaron, I actually did a test with this. This is what we saw from the
Mm.
control side. That was just kind of what we've been doing. This is what we saw from that AI agent. And then this was the results, this was the conversion, this was the engagement, et cetera.
All right, before I let you go, I actually do want to ask for a primer on RCS and specifically like what
Sure.
you're excited about with it and
Okay.
how you're like where you think a retention marketer should be thinking about it fitting. Is it like go figure it out now? It's like this is the thing, or is it like, hey, look, this is probably your third most important strategy. So like get to it when you get to it, or yeah, I don't know. How do you think about this?
You know what? I think about it in a way of who's your audience, right? Is your
Mm.
audience an early adapter? And again, what industry that you're in. So I'll give you an example. Sometime last year, I was flying with JetBlue and had an issue with my flight. So I hate chat box. I don't like to use a chat bot. It's not my favorite thing at all. The millennial, I want to get someone on the phone, maybe. So anyway, going through the site and it said, "Hey, would you like to chat?" So at the time, I thought it was my better judgment. Sure, I'll press the chat, and then it opened up my SMS inbox, and it was branded with JetBlue. I was able to solve my issue very quickly. It wasn't a hassle. And a few months later, had an experience with Apple, and the same thing was Apple. You want to utilize RCS, and I said from a customer support, customer service standpoint, this was the best experience. So I think that again, it looks at what is your audience. And I think about RCS have, it's very interactive. You can have carousels, right? You can have quizzes, you can have a lot of different things, but based on what you're selling or what product you're trying to do or what that engagement looks like, I think it becomes this may be very high on your list for you. If you see that SMS is, a channel for you that's super strong, tap into RCS now. If you see that there's opportunity, don't wait for, someone else to kind of adapt it and then, in your industry, and then you do it. Like think about those tests, even if it's again something that's like, hey, we want to test it maybe once a month, maybe once a quarter. Like it's not something to me that should be ignored. It's like, okay, but how aggressive you are with that depends on your industry to me.
Cool. I
Mhm.
love it. All right. Ivory, this is amazing. I want to wrap with, first of all, where can folks find you, or if you have a call to action, if
Yeah.
you just want to talk up Bark or literally anything else. And then secondly is just create space. If there's anything that you said that you want to double click on or anything that I didn't ask, that like any other advice you might have for CRM, you've given enough
Yeah.
insights. No pressure on that second part.
No, this is wonderful. I always enjoy talking to you, Eric. I can't wait till you're in New York again so you can go to dinner at 53. Remember that, our restaurant.
Yeah.
Find me on LinkedIn. I'm sure you guys will add my profile there. So find me on LinkedIn.
I like LinkedIn. Okay. So we'll find you.
Find me there. I'm always open to having conversations, chatting across the board. I can nerd out about this for hours, and then also learn from other people and their
Nice.
industries and things like that. What's working for them, what's not, what they hate, what they love, like their
Mm.
pain points. Like always want to expand my network in that regard. I would say that only last point that I would double click in again is for the and maybe not just the CRM professionals. I think anyone like collect those infinity stones, whatever that is for your area, right? Don't just kind of be the go-to person with your topic, right? With your expertise, but think about all the other things. And I would say one of the things that's kind of been the magic sauce for my career is learn how to speak in dollars and cents, right? Not just we sent this email and the open rate was good or the engagement was good. Your CFO does not care about that. Your COO does not care about that, right? They care about the money. And if you can prove out, I was saying this to a colleague last week. I said early in my career, I learned that I want to prove the ROI for my salary. If I'm making a certain amount of money, I want to show that my channels made probably 10 times that amount, right? You need me, right? Be
Okay.
irreplaceable if you can, particularly in this age of AI. So that's what I would say. That's what I say to anyone on my team and any mentee that I have.
I love it. Well, we got to get sponsors for this podcast so I can validate and justify my salary. So we'll do this separately.
You've done it
Ivory,
a million times over.
this is great. Thank you.
Thank
This is
you.
the best. I really appreciate all the insights and your energy and everything. It's always a pleasure to chat with you.
Always, Aaron. Thank you so much for having me. Let's do it again
All
soon.
right.
Hopefully. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Hi, I'm Aaron Schwartz, co-founder and co-CEO of Orita.ai. We build AI customer segmentation for some of Klaviyo's biggest brands like Oriana, Spanx, Caraway, Third Love, True Classic, Rem Beauty, and on and on. Brands come to us to help find untapped revenue, improve their click rate, drive away mean bots, and a bunch more. You can learn more or get a free customer engagement audit at Orita.ai.